Hey, it's been quite some time since the last upload, you know? Almost a year, in fact. You know, I did have some ideas and plans of what to do between now and then, but the Colossals video was delayed because info about them is still coming out even now, and I didn't want it to become outdated so soon. And the Decorations video, I don't really know what happened to that one. And then I had to throw all the other plans away so I could just get this one yearly video done. Speaking of, my yearly lore videos are usually at the end of the anniversary month, September, but this one's at the beginning. The reason for that is that I'm going to college now, and I don't know if I'll have enough time to make the video and edit it, especially if we're getting a lot of new lore to tie into the end of the big anniversary year event and the awakening of all 5 natural Colossals. Also, speaking about college, I'm looking to do something with my voice, or with my writing, whether it be radio, TV, voice acting, or even audiobooks, so if y'all could give me some criticism on that, that would be much appreciated. And yes, I know I talk fast, I'm from South Jersey. Anyways, the video. I have taken several criticisms from last year into account, such as the annoying repetitive music, and such as, well, something similar happened to the My Singing Monsters team themselves. Roll the clip.
An intense Big Bang-like event abruptly...
Big Bang.
That very scared me a lot.
Yeah, so I'll try and not peek the mic as much. I know it happens as I usually get louder when I talk, so sorry about the later chapters. And hey, speaking of mics, I got a new one. Very fun stuff. Now, final thing, I promise. If you want to contact me about anything, my email is boxmsm74@gmail.com. My Twitter is @cupscreaming, and here's several other things, why not, like my MSM friend code. Now, I present to you, My Singing Monsters, Complete Timeline and Lore, 2023 edition. The script for this, along with one that I update whenever anything new is revealed, is in the doobly-doo. First, let me quickly preface all of this. This is a mostly canon, free-use community resource, updated whenever anything new to the lore is revealed, with which to make anything that it may be needed for. Say, if someone were to make a fan game that they wanted to make fit into the lore somehow, they could use this to do it, although it is canon that all fan projects are also canon, just in a separate multiverse of their own. Or if someone wanted to make a deep dive YouTube series on the lore, they could use this as well, and any other projects that this may be needed for. Although, keep in mind that this, like any piece of media, is fallible, and may have extra content not directly stated by the monster handlers, the dev team, or in any other form of official media, and that in the same regard, it may lack anything that the monster handlers dev team have said, or that is stated in any other form of official media. Chapter 1. Monster Prehistory. Section 1. The Primordial Cosmic Hush. The Multiverse. The universes in this multiverse are all connected on a world tree similar to the Yggdrasil of the Norse mythology, whose name is the Stablo Mjericha. The multiverse consists of many other universes such as Thingia, the Thumpyverse, the Human World, the Prism Dimension, the Grapefruit Grove, and the Monster World, among others. The Thumpyverse and Thingia are the eldest of these, and have also started to sprout some multiverse-bearing trees of their own from seedlings dropped from the Stablo Mjericha, as have other universes also. The Monster World would seem quite young when compared to those two, but comparatively to the Human World, it is very ancient. The Stablo Mjericha sometimes seeps a sap, which is known to us as amber, or the binding magic of the trees. When any being from one dimension goes into another, it conforms to that dimension, such as we'll see with Prismatics, Rare Wobox, Bill, Spirit, and Whizbang. In the beginning of the Monster World... What Monster World? There is nothing here yet. There's only silence here. This time in the 2B Monster World is called the Primordial Cosmic Hush, as it was primordial, cosmic, and silent. Then, all of a sudden, bang! A Big Bang-like event known as the Big Clangor disrupts the hush, sending out a cacophony of sounds furiously, as well as some space dust, that fill the void cacophonously for eons. As a result of this event, 12 beings known as the Celestials are born, guardians of the elements. These 12 elements being, in no particular order, air, plant, earth, water, cold, fire, electricity, plasma, shadow, mech, crystal, and poison. And these 12 Celestials, in the same order as their elements that they reign over, are Atmos, Blasum, Tort, Hornicle, Glacier, Fernos, Galvana, Plixie, Ludwig, Vamp, Syncopite, and Skartar. These Celestials, incarnate forms of elemental energy, are the first inhabitants of the monster world. The origins of each celestial are various and unique in their very own ways. I cannot ensure that these are in the correct order chronologically, except for the first one. Furnos, Celestial of Fire and First Celestial, is said to have been forged in the living core of the monster world, aka the epicenter of that Big Bang-like event. Furnos was then expelled from the world into the stars in a prehistoric eruption. Once settled in the sky, it roared to life, throwing off sparks and casting light down on the world below. Hornicle, Celestial of Water, is said to have been formed directly from the cacophony of sound. Yet throughout the clangor, a wave of harmony swelled, crested, and crashed upon the void, pooling into a placid sea of euphony and starlight. The living ocean was born. Syncopite, Celestial of Crystal, is said to have been formed from when the very silence of the primordial cosmic hush grew so silent that it was compressed by its own weight and collapsed in on itself, forming a dense, luminous mass. The Syncopite splintered off from the mass, being a living megalith of crystal and rock, exploding and retracting, encapsulating the event for eternity. The rest of the mass formed the magical, time-warping diamonds which appear everywhere around the monster world. Tort, Celestial of Earth, is said to have formed from when the cacophony of the cosmos grew so loud that it formed a carapace to shield itself. It's also said that Tort measures time for all eternity. Glacier, Celestial of Cold, is said to have first manifested amidst a confluence of ice crystals, gravity, and chill vibes. Glacier, along with its drums, marks the glacial passage of time. Plixie, Celestial of Plasma, is said to have formed from when the primordial hush was still silent. It oozed and flowed in concert with its own internal melody and the nascent rhythm of the universe. Blasum, Celestial of Plant, sprouted from the first cosmic dust sent out by the Big Clangor, burgeoning and eventually blooming. Vamp, Celestial of Mech, spent eons as a sentient, though incorporeal, mass of energy. It eventually decided to put itself together, quite literally, and constructed its very own form out of random detritus scattered about the universe. The four other Celestials also came into existence around this time, but we do not yet have detailed descriptions of how. Each of these Celestials spread out among the New World and took residence up among the stars, with each living within the metaphysical space of their very own constellations. In this metaphysical state, they resembled compact, egg-like orbs. Connected to the specific areas of their origin, and inspired by the constellation shapes about them, each was imbued with their own elemental power. Over time, the prehistoric cacophonic clangor echoing throughout the monster world subsided, and silence took over once more. After some time, the unmistakably deep, sonorous voices of the Colossals were heard. These Colossals, nameless, disembodied spirits of creation, were inspired to harness the power of creation to make the monster world a richer place. Although nameless wouldn't be the correct term. They do have names, but they are not pronounceable to us mortal humans. I digress. The Colossals were amazed by the world that lay before them, specifically in the Celestials' elemental affiliations. There was also something else that they saw too. The emptiness. A blank, and most importantly silent, canvas for them to work with, to shape to their liking. The first task that the Colossals faced was to teach the 12 Celestials to sing. Each Celestial was taught to perform music in a style unique to them. The Celestials thus became the first singing monsters, and in return, the Celestials gave the Colossals an interest for their element, being called now Plant Colossal, or Fire Colossal, or whatever element they were gifted. Next, they built a mysterious piece of clockwork for the Celestials upon which they could gather and sing in harmony with each other. This place, called Starhenge, as well as connecting the Celestials together, connected them to both their stars above and their elements below, as it was positioned halfway between the stars and the living core, from which it drew its power to stay levitating. After this success, the Colossals wished to create a world full of harmonious singing monsters that could be combined of both the influences of nature and music. Now, I think it would be important to distinguish the difference between Colossals and Celestials, with there being some confusion in gray areas on the subject. While Celestials came first, Colossals are the more powerful of the two groups. Celestials are guardians who watch over monsters with their element, while Colossals are the more creatory godlike beings who are more alien and unknown to us mortals, with their very names being unknown and able to confuse a well-learned individual. Colossals also taught the Celestials how to even make music in the first place, which is sort of the basis for everything this world is built on, so yeah. Chapter 1, Section 2, Creation. To test their abilities of creation, the Colossals went to a pocket dimension off of the prime reality, the main dimension, of the monster world. This place would act as a sandbox for the experimentation of their creative willpower. Their first experiment was with the animation of inanimate matter, to turn it into living beings. Statues of beings plucked directly from the Colossals' imaginations were carved out of bubblerite and installed on the early ethereal island. A few statues can actually still be found in a special place called the Ethereal Meadow. Specific interactions with bubblerite in the pocket dimension led some of it to turn into crystallium, the first ever crystal. The Colossals used this crystal, or a plasmic form of it, to form structures that hold things together by forming lattices of arm-like strings holding onto each other in the shape of whatever they wanted to form. If exposed to a special process the Colossals pioneered called life formula, also known as the spark of life, the statues could turn from bubblerite statues into living, breathing monsters, such as the Primordial Monculus, or the true final product, the Ethereals. Using this method, the nascent world would be populated. Several of these statues did not go onto the animation stage, and were instead reused as bowls to hold precious gems. The Spark of Life itself was a very powerful tool in the Colossal's arsenal that let inanimate matter become animate matter via the imbuement of vitalizing energies. This power was later found to also be in the power set of the element of electricity, becoming the core identity of what that element is. Once the Colossals were satisfied and done with testing out their creativity, they once again turned their attention to the main dimension of the monster world, known as the Prime Reality, using crystallium as the base element upon which to form it. Yet one specific Colossal stayed behind, locking itself in by locking the pocket dimension off to interdimensional travel, so that it could continue to transform the sandbox into an island in its own right. It laid out blueprints over the whole of the environment, and zapped crystallium into the perfect formations of trees, horns, and whatever else was needed upon what would one day become Ethereal Island. Using what they had learned in the teaching of the Celestials, the Colossals joined together in a great song that shaped and powered their creative willpower. The Great Song is another very powerful tool in the arsenal of the Colossals, which allows them to create whenever they join together in song. Building off of the still active and potent living core of fire, the Colossals drew power and energy directly from the multiversal tree, the Stablo Miehricha. Taking some of its sap, they infused the living core with crystallized amber and musical potential. Harnessing the power of the Stablo Miehricha, the Colossals established what was to be the crowning jewel of the monster world, the continent. This landmass sits in the direct center of the infinitely vast expanse of the living ocean, directly above the living core, and directly underneath Starhenge. It was from the continent that Starhenge 2 got its power, what allowed it to stay levitating. The first element in this world was the element of fire, and from it the natural elements were born. Because of this, it is regarded as the most powerful element of them all. As the natural elements came about, they each got lands of their own added to the continent, except for fire, which doesn't get its own land, but instead it has a volcano leading into the living core of the monster world, which represents its quiet, guiding presence to the natural elements. Each elemental land of the continent had its own crystals fashioned after the pocket dimension's own crystallium. The plant lands had Vigidian, the cold lands had Frosium, the air lands had Skylight, the water lands had Aquanine, and the earth lands had Stonix. Although there were no fire lands, there was a fire-affiliated crystal, that being Pyrosite, which looked the most similar to crystallium out of all of them, as if it had just been recolored from blue to orange. Through the combined efforts of the Colossal's great song, the first monsters came to be and began to populate the monster world. Those of you who are familiar with the franchise might suspect that we jumped directly into the Dawn of Fire, but before that, there was a much simpler time, a time before monsters first sang together in unity. The Colossals, although directly forming monsters exactly as they had wanted, had a creative idea. They had to create different beings and have them evolve over time into their preferred end goal, the thing that they had originally envisioned. In this time, over millions of years, monsters evolved, adapting to their environments, not yet unleashing their musical abilities. Several breeds of monsters who share each other's likeness had co-evolved together, giving rise to the first monster families. Hummels could swim without need of their planty membranes, and so could Fanglers. One such group even wished to touch the sun. The original common canas, now known today as rare canas, were very populous, more so than the today common cousin. and one particular peculiar breed decided to develop a different non-lung way of breathing. Extraordinary. Over these millions of years, the Celestials went through their life cycle, being young, then being adult, then being elder, before finally turning into stone statues to then be reborn and restart the cycle. Chapter 2, The Dawn of Fire. Section 1, The Golden Age of the Monster World. The Dawn of Fire, when monsters decided to band together for the first time. The continent was a vast landmass of unity between all monsters of all species, where young monsters could roam between the different elemental lands. Once matured enough, these young monsters could teleport to the Outer Islands. The Outer Islands exist in an infinitely vast expanse over the living ocean, and are populated by only the correct, eligible monsters. Here, monsters found their forever home. The original Outer Islands were Space Island, a dense sphere of rock encircled by rings of stone, Cloud Island, a series of platforms made out of clouds with paper birds flying all about, and Cave Island, sitting in a subterranean water pool situated in a cavern deep underground. The origins of the Outer Islands are still unknown. From the Celestials' divine perch of Starhenge, they watched over the monster world, guiding and protecting all who bore their elements. Although, they usually stay as dormant egg-like orbs in their constellations, needing to be summoned downwards by the power of star charts and cosmic dice in tandem with the observatory, mysterious objects connected to the celestial powers of Starhenge. Only one celestial could be summoned per month, as there was only one constellation shining overhead per month. Thrumbles, long-necked monsters who enjoyed stargazing, took it up upon themselves to name the constellations of the elements. Poisons was called Poison's Mark, Shadows was called Shadowed Glare, Earth's was called Earthing Ellipse, Plasma's was called Plasmic Ooze, Air's was called Weathered Winds, Water's was called Ocean's Tears, Fire's was called Core of Flame, Cold's was called Frozen Form, Plants was called Growing Green, Crystals was called Crystalline Crop, Mechs was called Metal Gears, and Electricity's was called Immortal Jolt. Technology was booming during this age, so much so that it was referred to as the Golden Age of the Monster World. They had developed economic markets, trade relations with distant lands, and the Colossals had gifted the monsters with structures for breeding and incubating monsterlings, structures for creating food, clothes, and toys, castles to house them, and a teleporter to travel to the Outer Islands. The Colossals also made a structure for unlocking the evolutionary potential of monsters, however, it was not yet given to the monsters, being stored in the higher plane. Discovery and adventure were high too, as they decided to claim a sea leviathan with a rock on its back as an island for them to sing and celebrate doing so upon. This place was called Party Island. A strange extra-dimensional portal called the Prism Gate appeared, and it seemed to be sentient. When monsters entered it, they exited as colorful creatures whose looks completely different from the original, yet it still makes the same sound. Extraordinary! Monsters coming from the Prism Gate may be red, blue, yellow, green, purple, or orange, and prismats, which come back through the gate with the returning monsters, can be used to increase the chances of getting a specifically colored prismatic. So many monsters went into the Prism Gate that the Outer Islands needed to construct special hotels to fit the overflow of monsters. From the strange world beyond the Prism Gate came the Outer Island Crystals, powerful, magical crystals that increase the potency of prismats to turn a monster into whatever the desired color may be. Party had Confedite, Space had Nebulox, Cloud had Aurorium, and Cave had Quaritz. Way, way over yonder, from some alien planet, there was an incoming invasion. Anglo crash lands into the living ocean, falling all the way down to the Monstriana Trench and filling the sea with abundant sea life. It might have made some contact with the surface world, but that remains to be seen. And no, there will not be a reference to this alien planet ever again. Chapter 2, Section 2, The Cataclysm. This great era, as all things, must eventually come to an end, and the Colossals could sense that its end was not too far away. Two in particular were discussing how to ready the monsters for the imminent doom. One suggested training the individual musical ability of a monster, and so decided to imbue its spirit into an arena-like island that the monsters had built. Inspired by the actions of his fellow Colossal, the second Colossal decided to make its own island to ready the monsters, but instead of focusing on the individual, it focused on the group, on unity. It then made an accompanying prophecy about how monsters being united and singing together would help to bring the balance to the monster world, and took upon itself a great monster encased in amber to act as the island's centerpiece. This tale of two Colossals would later be found carved into some pillars on the Colosseum in text known as monstroglyphics. These decisions proved to be very timely, as something very big was just around the corner. The full Colossinga monster glyphics and Tribal Island Prophecy will be in the extra sections at the end. But before we get to that, there are several events in the timeline that we know happened at some time in the old past with no definite place, but within the waning days of the Dawn of Fire, so we'll discuss them all here. The first of these is Amber Island, an island made to act as a seed vault in protection of all monsters of the fire element specifically, held in the higher plane with the full spirit of the Fire Colossal, also known as the Queen Colossal. This Colossal, unbeknownst to many, sought out aid from a space and time-faring individual known only as Cub, spelled K-A-B, who prototyped early vessel designs by capturing candle wax from the living core within a bucket, thus called Cub's Wax. This Colossal, always a fan of preservation, decided to also preserve another dimension of the multiverse, the Great Fruit Grove. It called this preservation effort Project Seed. The second of these events is the Magical Sanctum. When the great Titan Enchantler tried its darndest to become a Colossal, it, upon finding out that this was nearly impossible, fled to the previously locked-off Pocket Dimension, somehow. There are also hints that the Ethereals were freed from the Pocket Dimension at about the same time the Cataclysm took place. Third is the construction of the Colossi, powerful structures linked to the consciousness of the Colossals. The fourth and final of these events is the development of the Woboks. Galvana, Celestial of Electricity, and the de facto leader of the Celestials, used the spark of life contained within the orb on its staff to create a being known as the Woboks, and much like the Colossals before it, experimented with its creation in the Pocket Dimension. Whether Galvana had special foreknowledge to build the Woboks to aid in the Cataclysm disaster management is still unknown, but that was eventually to be its purpose. Now, back to your regularly scheduled Monster World ending catastrophe. Then it came. The Cataclysm that would end the Dawn of Fire. We're still in the dark about what had ended the Dawn of Fire exactly, but what we do know is that something had disrupted the Colossals and made them forget how to sing together in unity and harmony, the things that this world was based upon. The great discord amongst the Colossals proved way too much, as sending a great quake out towards the continent. The continent began to break into multiple pieces, with each elemental land becoming its very own island. The fire elementals, not having an elemental land to call their own, were led by Akena to climb into a volcano, before that same volcano sank to the bottom of the living ocean. The colossal spirits decided to sacrifice themselves for their creations, and imbued their spirits into each of these elemental lands, as well as any other lands they could find, trying to save what they could, using their life force to stop the chaos. They shaped and formed the islands to both their likeness and their elemental affinity, resulting in the current natural islands, among others, which is also why they have faces. The Colossals were not the only ones who made an effort to help the continent, as Galvana, Celestial of Electricity, decided to make a backup power generator of sorts that would act as neurons for the Colossals in an effort to help the islands. These then became known as the Woboks, and were put into vaults on each of the continental islands, as well as the Volcano of the Living Core, as well as Ethereal Island, as well as a few others. As the continent came down, so would Starrange soon do also, as it ran on energy generated by the continent, although not yet, because it still had a bit of backup energy. But when that fateful day would come, the Celestials would turn themselves into statues and restart their life cycle to hopefully save them from the collision of their lofty perch with the ground below. Chapter 2, Section 3, The Great Pause, also called the Interlude. The Great Pause, also called the Interlude. Nothing happened, and so much nothing happened, that the Great Pause is not comprehensible on a human scale of time. Timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly, as they say. The separation between the element of fire and the other natural elements had caused the element of fire to drift slightly in breeding time and chances, and it had become its very own class. The natural monsters eventually forget about the fire monsters entirely. Sometime after the Dawn of Fire, the magical elements would come about, with their islands taking the places of the outer islands, as the outer islands are presumed to have disappeared in the Prism Gate, but not Party Island. Now that slippery Leviathan is still out there swimming in the living ocean to this day. Over in the human world, sometime during the early 20th century, 1900s-ish, Dr. Warden East Spirit, a very curious naturalist and inventor, while working on a device detecting unknown radio frequencies, somehow discovered and made contact with the monster world, and the greater multiverse, sparking the field of monster handling as a whole. Obsessed with actually meeting the beings responsible for creating the beautiful music that he had detected, Warden created a device known as the Separating Existence Widget, acronym SO, to travel the seam between the human and monster worlds, literally sewing the seam. On the journey between the dimensions, Warden lost hold of the device in the blank space between the spaces, leaving the device to randomly open and close portals between the two worlds before it inevitably lost power. While he was there, he made discoveries of and on the natural islands, and duly noted them down and recorded them down in his voice logs. While on an interview, Dr. Spirit stated his theory of different variants of monster based on environmental changes, which would later come true. Twice. The man seems so enthralled by the monster world that it seemed that he would one day go in for good and never come back. And that is, evidently, what happened. His teeth fell out due to the living ocean water and improper hygiene, and much like a monster sent through the prism gate, he became unrecognizable, save for his classic monster-handling pith helmet and his adventurous huzzah cry. Dr. Spirit's work would not go unseen, as Canadian game company Big Blue Bubble would one day find his works and decide to make a game on it, as well as multiple other worlds in this multiverse. And thanks to monster handler Matt, they were able to find the hotspot for most of the random portals was somewhere around southwestern Ontario, so they decided to base themselves there, tracking portals with their portal indicating teleporter helmets, acronym PITH helmets, for monster handlers and monster exchange students to come through and go through, being given both the location and a rough duration for giving portals time being open. Spirit's pith helmet was just a regular one, no fancy gimmicks back in his day. Since the SO device may eventually stop working one day, modern monster handlers are working on another device to make interdimensional travel even easier. Several monsters who came through and wanted to stay include a mammoth, eventually being part human due to the entire Prism Gate thing, being dubbed Bill, a furcorn, and a pom-pom. Chapter 3. The Modern Monster World. Section 1. The Contemporary Era. After the Great Pause, we are now in the contemporary monster world. The natural islands, remnants of the continent, are the homes of the natural monsters. These islands being Plant Island, Cold Island, Air Island, Water Island, and Earth Island. Gold Island, also known as the King Colossal, is a paradise on another plane of existence, and it's where natural monsters go when they are mature enough, being able to visit it in their minds without having to leave their home island. Although, the monsters on this island are particularly those who remember the Cataclysm and the destruction of the continent, because there, they can have that togetherness feeling from the continent, not being separated among all the natural islands and all that jazz. Also featured on Gold Island is a castle, which has an infinite amount of beds, so any monster can be on the island with no worry of overpopulation. The natural islands, on the other hand, are in need of a castle upgrade, so they construct the extravagant castle. Continuing Dr. Spirit's work is the adventurous, young, bald monster handler Matt, who somehow got a hold of Spirit's journal, as well as a strange book dubbed the Magicuricon. A new class of monsters migrates to the natural islands, being called the Seasonals, as the monsters in this class come back for festivities yearly. Each natural island has its own seasonal, and each seasonal has its own event. Plant Island has Punkleton, who celebrates Spookticle. Cold Island has Yule, who celebrates the Festival of Yay, the specific day of which is called Yay Day, and the surrounding time is referred to as Yaytide. Air Island has Schmoochel, who celebrates the season of love. Water Island has Blabbit, who celebrates Eggstravaganza. Blabbit likes to steal monster eggs and paint them, and then hide them all over the island. And Earth Island has Hula, who celebrates Summer Song. Hula also likes to hang out on Air Island with her buddy Pom Pom. Gold Island also celebrates the season, despite not having a seasonal. Yet. Maybe. It celebrates Anniversary Month, also known as the game's anniversary, also known as the date of renewed contact between the human and monster worlds. It is unknown where the seasonals go between their event and when it is not their event. At least, for now anyways. The monsters decide to go green and switch to diamond mines less harmful to the environment, but before they do so, they discover strange vaults containing hundreds of strange boxes called the Wubbox. When the correct monsters enter into a Wubbox, it powers up and joins the population of the islands. It is reported that the interior of the Wubbox is very fun, almost like a playground. A new monster appears on Plant Island, this being the Sugarbush, host of a new element and class known both only as Legendary. The Legendary element is an element symbolizing human inspiration to the monster world, and it seems that the Sugar Bush was inspired by country music artist Christian Bush and his song Love or Money. Monsters of the ethereal class, those created by the Colossals in the Pocket Dimension, follow suit in appearing on the natural islands. Ethereals, like the seasonals before them, each have one single element monster on a specific natural island. Plant has gas with the element of plasma, Cold has Grumpire with the element of shadow, Air has Rebro with the element of mech, Water has Geode with the element of crystal, and Earth has Humbug with the element of poison. The single elemental ethereals can then be teleported to Ethereal Island to breed with each other to create the rest of the ethereal class. Ethereals, although having 5 elements to work with, only have double and single element monsters. It is said that this is because these elements are too out there and strange, so a combination of too many of them would be way too unstable. A new island called Sugarbush Island is discovered on the seam between the human and monster worlds, and is where the legendary element Sugarbush of Plant Island can go to reunite with its family, the Sugar Fam, and sing a tune reminiscent of Love or Money by Christian Bush. The element of fire, now long forgotten, is still seen in effect in the monster world, in the powerful wishing torches that improve breeding chances. Chapter 3, Section 2, Curiosity and Discovery. With all this exploration and discoveries being happening at such rapid pace, even more castle upgrades are needed to house new monsters. The new Paradise Castle was formed after the likeness of Gold Island's own infinitely bedded Crystal Castle, and was made with the consultation of the multiverse's finest architects. They even call it the be-all and end-all of monster living arrangements, so surely no newer castle upgrades would ever be needed in the future. New variants of monsters are discovered, proving Spirit correct, and are classified as rare monsters. Globes, glowing extra-dimensional beings who provide a stunning light display for the islands, blip into existence carrying plans to build a device called the Fuser to bring more of them into the monster world, which, in the spirit of diplomacy, the monsters generously built for them. Other than summoning new globes into the monster world, the Fuser can also fuse any 2 globes together to make a globe of a new color. It is rumored that the globes come from that same extra-dimensional portal known as the Prism Gate from the Dawn of Fire. Just as the last of the rares were being discovered, a brand new island along the seam is found where natural monsters from all across the multiverse can come in unity and work together. If the monsters sing together enough, their voices can reach the resonant frequency of amber, shattering a large fossil atop the central tree stump and unveiling the mysterious monster encased inside. Is that a Kana? Single element monster of the element of fire? Yeah. This Kana still remembers life back from the Dawn of Fire and tells everyone about it, even taking them underground to view ancient cave paintings of the long-lost fire monsters, and giving them a map of the ancient continent, although the amber has taken quite the toll on its well-being, so its memory is still a bit not there. The full Tribal Island prophecy that the Colossal made about Tribal Island is going to be at the end in the extra section. The Woboks have been a bit more inventive lately, with select specimens traveling over to the human world and infusing themselves with keytars, vocoders, record players, and all manners of 70s and 80s paraphernalia. These specific monsters have also traveled into a human world computer and have taken inspiration from error messages for their song, creating the rare Woboks. Some other specimens have also been seen doing something a bit inventive. Being the only monster of your element is hard, so the Woboks decided to do something about this. If it couldn't find friends, it could make them. It decided to carve these imagined playmates, that it called the Wubblins, out of bubblerite, and use the supernatural element of electricity's ability of the spark of life to zap them all to life, using eggs bred on the natural islands. It then created a map of sorts of the Wubblin Island, which somehow got into the hands of Blabbit, which is why it's named Blabbit's Scroll, who showed it to the rest of the monster world, although it was cut up into multiple pieces that had to be reassembled by some help from the human world. Then, when it was satisfied with the number of playmates that it had created for itself, it joined their chorus, revealing itself as their creator. It even made its own colossal for it and its creations to roam upon. However, the case seems to be that the island is not in fact colossal, but just a realistically accurate carving of one. In the creation of this island, Woboks also created a great storm to cloak the island. This robot is quite eccentric. It even decided to take up residence in the Pocket Dimension. Maybe Woboks is really a super ethereal class monster instead of a supernatural class monster? New monsters living in burrows appear atop the natural islands and are known as dipsters. These monsters are timid and afraid of the light, so they only pop up every now and then. However, they can be coaxed out of the earth by using keys, a special currency made of the space dust from the Big Clanger that unlocks little doors in their burrows. An alternate timeline of the natural islands is discovered, where some items from the Dawn of Fire were not destroyed by the Cataclysm, such as an old teleporter. This is known as the Mirror Timeline, or to some, the Mirror Dimension, and is home to the Mirror Islands, alternate versions of the natural islands. Also on the Mirror Islands are pink plasmatic strings, as well as some random things belonging to that island's ethereal, such as gas orbs, grumpire smoke, rebro brains, geode crystals, or clouds of humbug toxin. A new island is found along the seam, an island where humans are free to compose their own melodies for monsters to sing. This island is called Composer Island. The Colossal on this island seems to open its eyes and wiggle its teeth every now and then, which is said to be an effect of being on the seam so close to the human world. Strange new legendary element monsters who can somehow speak English begin to pop up on the natural islands, giving lyrics to their songs. These monsters are known as the Wordos, and they get their lyrical inspiration by eating relics, which are pure musical potential encased in amber. Wordos, being bearers of the legendary element, are inspired by several employees from a Canadian game company called Big Blue Bubble. Pearlsona is inspired by Sarah Parsons, Talker is inspired by Dave Kerr, Magpie is inspired by Maggie Park, and Steworb is inspired by Matthew Stewart. Dipsters continue their expansion by popping up in the Pocket Dimension, which is quite strange because nothing can live there. Chapter 3, Section 3, Rediscovery. And also, every class gets its own island. Zzz. Crash! Starhenge suddenly crash lands on a random colossal in the near middle of nowhere. Here, statues of the Celestials can be found. These statues are actually the Celestials' powered down forms that they became to protect themselves from when their hovering home would eventually crash into the surface of the monster world. They can be awoken with the power of the Spark of Life by zapping eggs from the natural islands, albeit they are children now and remember nothing. Studies of a new monster variant known as epics have been found, written in a book, Monsters or Marvels, by Dr. Warden E. Spurt, the first ever monster handler from sometime in the 1900s somewhere. Epics are specifically noted for being evolved forms of the common monster to suit their environments, such as Epic Mammoth who shovels snow, whereas Common Mammoth does not shovel snow. The volcano from the continent resurfaces. The Kano of Tribal Island, beckoned by the call of relics from the very living core itself, leads a band of monsters down through a cave system to look at cave paintings where they learn of the natural islands originally being one, how something split the continent, and how the Colossals imbued themselves upon the islands, and how the fire monsters ventured into the living core's volcano for safety. They continue onward through the caves and find Firehaven, an island where the element of fire and its monsters had been hiding away ever since the end of the Dawn of Fire, waiting and hopeful that they would one day reunite with their natural friends. Now, they were ready to start anew and spread out among the furthest undiscovered reaches of the monster world. The fire monsters, now being a re-established class in the monster world, naturally wish to expand and have an island on the surface like everyone else. They tried searching for the original outer islands and they didn't find them, so they had Glowell scout out over the living ocean for some other type of land, and it found a very small sandbar. Upon this sand, the fire monsters, along with some natural friends, made an island for themselves out of blown glass and called it the Fire Oasis. All fire monsters now had 2 islands of choice to live upon, and now live evenly among them, even though this isn't really displayed in-game. Thanks to the great power of ingenuity and unity shared among all monsters, they were able to construct this colossal-like blown glass structure within a week. New island skins are found on new beasts known as Titans. Titans like to take other islands' places. Plant Island has the Harvard Titan, Cold Island has the Sweaty Titan, whose snow is actually dandruff, Air Island has the Gigacheap Titan, Water Island has the Glubber Titan, who seems to be the elder version of that Leviathan who was under Party Island from the Dawn of Fire. Told you it was still out there somewhere. Its name was first seen in a book held by Octopus by the name of Mysteries of the Living Ocean. And Earth Island has the Hahu Titan, who scribes all Monster World history over its body. Shame we can't read it. So, what exactly are Titans? Titans are like Colossus in the fact that they are island-sized, but different in the fact that they are not spirits. Titans are just naturally large creatures, so large in fact that they can support full ecosystems atop their heads. Water Island's Glubber is similar to a giant fish or Chinese dragon, and Air Island's Gigacheap is similar to a giant owl, so some may equate them to the megafauna of the world. Also shared between the Titans is the fact that we know what their children look like. The humongous Gigacheap's children are yellow little tricks that you can hold in your hands, and the Glubber has a life cycle that goes from this. The Glub Pole, which is where they go from a black dot swimming atop the surface of the living ocean, like Primordial Island. The Glublet, where they develop fins and venture into deeper waters. And finally, the Glubber, where they are their full-grown selves, the most beautiful sea creatures ever, living in lagoons with other Glubbers and bestowing the gift of Glub to those whom it finds worthy. Titans also like to take other islands' places, and this is foreshadowing. Somewhere out there in the monster world, among the shadows and the stories, the mythical monsters, Gajube and Yostrich, who some thought to be real and others not, make their appearances on Plant and Air Islands, and bring some of their favorite decorations with them. At the same time, some adventuring fire monsters wants to go up further and further up out of their caves go stellar when they found a colony on the new fire frontier. Only having 3 elements, they sent out requests for reinforcements, but which element was to come would be the 4th one? Cold, Earth, or Air? Chapter 3, Section 4, The Magical Saga. Turns out, it was the element of Psychic winning this competition all along. The new Magical class has come out of hiding, and along with their grand reveal, the island's 3rd eye opens. The Psychic monsters tell us that this island was in the spot of an island from ancient times that suddenly blipped out of existence. They also inform us that the Titan of this island is named Grap. Could it be that Psychic Island really took the place of Space Island? A new seasonal comes crashing in on Fire Haven. This monster's name is Gobligord, and it celebrates the season of Feast Ember. It, as well as being on Fire Haven, is also on Fire Oasis, as it claims to be a seasonal for all Fire Islands. Some speculate that Gobligord has been around for a really long time, celebrating always on Fire Haven, but we didn't know about it because we hadn't known about Fire Haven. Dipsters somehow tunnel through the waxy Fire Haven and the glass-blown Fire Oasis, bringing their dirt with them when they pop out on the other side. High above the clouds, the next magical island, Fairy Island, home to the fairy elementals, is discovered by a wandering Bob-Yog tower with the Canis sleeping on it. This new island, high up and surrounded by mist and heavy fog, rests on the Facade Titan. Could this have been the location of Cloud Island? Deep underground. Deeper than ever thought possible. The next magical island, Bone Island, is discovered by a Stog who chased a bone down a hole in Fire Haven. This new island sits in a subterranean pool of water and is covered in various sized bones, crystals, and fossils of fauna and flora all alike, and is on a titan named Necrol. Could this have been where Cave Island was? With all the new rares and epics being discovered, the natural islands are facing a housing crisis. Apparently, you can't always trust the multiverse's finest architects. After holding an interview with several monsters to see if anyone has any bright ideas on how to fix the problems, with several laughable tries, Akana presents the idea of using the crystals that were once in abundance all over the continent back in the Dawn of Fire to construct new castles. With the fire monsters both remembering the Dawn of Fire and living underground, they have become the mineralogical experts of the monster world and told the naturals exactly where to go to dig and find their respective crystals. These castles are known as crystalline castles, and vary from island to island depending on the crystal used. This would mean Viridian castles for Plant Island, Frozen castles for Cold Island, Skylight castles for Air Island, Aquanine castles for Water Island, and Stonix castles for Earth Island. Each of these new crystalline castles has 3 tiers in its upgrades. The first is the raw crystal, the second is the polished crystal, and the third is the carved crystal, where the crystals are set in jewelry. The castles have specified podiums for each tier of crystals to sit upon. During the 7th ever Summer Song, a remix is made to do the earthquake. The monster world itself somehow dances along, and an earthquake strikes! The ancient Colosseum rises up out of the ocean depths. The monsters make a boat to sail out to it, dubbed the Spirit of Adventure, which takes about a month to do. On this island, monsters can battle against each other to level up their individual singing abilities. But no violence, it's all just a friendly song ballad to put the other opponent to sleep. They can also play dress-up. Their costumes can give them new moves to use in battle, but only on this island. No My Little Pony cosplay for any up-hoppolies on the other islands. The final magical island, Light Island, makes itself known when a sponge blows out some anniversary month candles a bit too hard, sending a gust of wind towards Fire Haven, blowing out all the candles that have been lit in there for who knows how long, leaving the fire monsters in total darkness. One by one, each new light elemental comes out of the darkness. This island, on a titan named Phosphora, is much like Party Island, as it is nomadic completely and moves constantly, having no one stable location. It is also said that this island's titan is extra-dimensional and comes from the prison gate like the globes before it. One of the most wondrous natural phenomena can be found on, or rather above, Light Island, as the Aurora Monstralis constantly follows Light Island around wherever it goes. Or does Light Island follow the Aurora Monstralis? One can never be too sure. Natural Island seasonals can now travel to the Colosseum. When Shmuel goes to the Colosseum, it decides to be the hero that everyone needed and brings costumes to the rest of the monster world, so now all of your Clambles can cosplay as Clamburgers. A new island has been found in the Pocket Dimension. An island for Magicals. The magical single elementals get remote teleported to this location by some ghasts in the ethereal meadow. Here, the magical elements can live in harmony. Slowly, each pure magical reveals itself, filling up the island's population and song. Then finally, Enchantling, Quad Elemental and boss of the magical class, appears. In its appearance, the horns of their island, a titan named Enchantler, a name no one was sure of as it was lost to history but it was eventually rediscovered, began to glow, and then suddenly, its eyes opened. It is rumored that these two beings share a link. Possibly that Enchantling is the younger diminutive form of the great titan Enchantler. Either that, or Enchantling is just feeding off of Enchantler's monster-romantic energies to figure itself more like the Enchantler. You never know. If a monster potentially turning into a titan seems strange, then the titan turning into a colossal would seem even stranger. Enchantler, the titan of Magical Sanctum, wished to ascend and become a colossal, but upon realizing how impossible, or at least near impossible, the task was, it fled to the Pocket Dimension. Wanting its own family, it decided to take in the magical monsters and give them a home. Being in the Pocket Dimension can take quite the toll on a monster though, so it seems to have developed some strange growth out of its skin as a side effect of exposure. Chapter 3, Section 5. Every class gets its own island. At long last, the mysterious seasonals have revealed to us their forever abode where they stay for the rest of the year when not celebrating their seasonal event, or when not at their antipodal out-of-season event. Situated in a loft or attic of a wooden monster-made island adorned with a lighthouse, the seasonal shanty has revealed itself. There are also several new seasonal friends to be found, such as the Cake-like Jamboree, who you should not eat, who celebrates Gold Island's Anniversary Month event. But all seasonals will be revealed in due time. This island, instead of being a colossal or titan, is actually just a wooden structure with no sentience whatsoever. Newer seasonals, instead of immediately celebrating their event, will reveal themselves upon the shanty, wait a year in planning, and then go out to their event. More news is that the Natural Island seasonals have the title of Core Seasonals. Core means single elemental, works for any monster class, since all seasonal single elemental, we use this term only when referring to them because it's easier. Gobbligord, however, is not a core seasonal, and is instead an aux seasonal, short for auxiliary, and also a reference to aux chords, because music and stuff. The Werewolf decides to go on an adventure and finds itself on Ethereal Island. Maybe Super Ethereal is a legitimate class now? Could it be? It is! It's the Epic Wobox! Epic Wobox appears after select Wobox are left to ferment, as they say, in the deeper vaults, developing a link with the Colossal and the island's element in both its look and sound, being different from island to island. A new seasonal, known as Cloud of Vera, reveals itself, and for now, is planning its event of the Beat Hereafter on the seasonal shanty, and won't yet celebrate it for a bit. Similarly, the Time-Wielding Caralong, a seasonal monster celebrating the Crescendo Moon, reveals itself upon the seasonal shanty. Way up on the higher plane, it appears that Gold Island is not alone, as the new Amber Island is spotted. This island hosts the reunified halves of the Fire Colossal, and had been a safe haven for the fire monsters ever since the split of the continent, despite the existence of Firehaven, and as such, acts as a seed vault of sorts for the original fire monsters from Dawn of Fire. Sorry, no fire magicals allowed. Holding vessels, which can be turned into living eggs with the spark of life, similar to waking Wublins and reviving Celestials. The proper term for which, with the spark of life on vessels, like how Wublins are woken up, is revitalized. Each vessel contains the essence of the monster depicted on them. What we mean by their essence is basically every unique thing that makes that specific monster that monster, which is portrayed in the eggs required for proper revitalization, if that's understandable. These vessels can expire though, so there is a limited amount of time to revitalize them, and not every vessel is out of storage at the same exact time. Everything about this island ties it back to the foundational elements of the monster world itself, from the green trees of the continent, to the amber of the Stablo Meteor region making up the island itself, and even the castle of the island, which also has crystallized musical essence in it in relic form. Also on this island, several species of fire monster make their in-game appearance. Lore-wise, they live on Haven and Oasis. In other fiery news, the Fire Islands, like the natural islands before them, are in need of better castle upgrades. The problem is, though, while the natural crystals were available in abundance, despite what Mirror Air Island's bio would have you to believe, there were only a few veins left of Pyrosite, and the monsters had just barely scrounged up enough to make castles for both Haven and Oasis. The coin-sniffing seasonal monster Fiddle reveals itself upon the shanty, celebrating the Clover Spell event. Similarly green, the Vivane, the critter-loving seasonal of the Echoes of Eco, especially those winglings, makes its very first appearance upon the shanty with quite the sneezy part. Evermore, new seasonals are being found left and right. After years of investigation, the elusive hard-to-track Spirit had revealed itself upon the shanty when it found an electric generator during a freak electric storm. The shanty sailed too close into Woodland Island. This adventurous monster celebrates Perplexplore, the celebration of adventure. Some speculate that it might just be Dr. Warden's spirit transformed due to constant exposure to the monster world and its living ocean. The freak electric storm from earlier was actually heralding, and is what summoned, through a rift that it tore, the seasonal monster Monculus, seasonal of life formula, aka the spark of life, which celebrates the creation of all monster kind. This being is one of the first monsters created by the Colossals during early experimentation with Bubblerite statues and Crystallium in the Pocket Dimension. Eventually, after enough time spent around singing monsters, even the mute globes wished to cast aside their honorary singing monster status by evolving into the colorful Whizbang, the seasonal of sky painting, where these new forms fill the sky with every color imaginable, and everyone is welcome to celebrate their pride of being a monster and who they really are, and acceptance of that. Even the Magical Islands, the newest of modern islands, are getting so packed with how many monsters there are that even they need crystalline castles. Theirs are made of those outer island crystals that originated out of the Prism Gate. The fire monsters, being the mineralogical experts of the monster world, guide them to the crystals to help them build their castles. Amber Island begins to heat up as the hot and steamy crucible shatters out of the encasing amber. It appears that monsters, upon entering the crucible with relics and keys, have their evolutionary potential literally unlocked by said items in combination with the structure. The relics, which, reminder, are musical essence encased in amber, get melted down, making the solid-like structure get hotter and hotter, and keys generally have very evolutive potential in them, being made from the space dust of the Big Clanger. Thus, the monsters are recast as rare or epic variants of themselves. Although, this system is not perfectly guaranteed to work 100% of the time. Upon a failed attempt to evolve a monster, an elemental flag will unfurl, boosting all chances of evolution to monsters of its element, a process still largely unknown. However, after any evolution attempt failed or succeeded, extra leftover heat from the crucible may be recast and retrieved in relic form, or reused in another evolution. Evolutions of the crucible, unlike regular rares or epics, are always available. And flags, which are usually available for rares, are not available for epics, making epics harder to get. The final seasonal monster, the well-learned and knowledgeable, bookish if you so prefer, Bookworm, seasonal of Mindboggle, makes its appearance upon the shanty. Finally, the seasonals are all united. Similarly to the seasonals, the mythical class is also rapidly expanding in size, starting with the Lonesome Strombonin, who, like a Juban Ostrich before it, brought some very interesting decorations with it. The Colossals, forever asleep in their own dream space, and nearing lucidity as they wish to commune with each other once more, summon the Mythicals to their true home, Mythical Island, an island based on the principles of wanting to reunite with one's kin. Additionally, the island exists solely within this dream space. Here, the Mythicals are greeted by the Catalyst, the personification of dreams themselves, who is thought to have always existed in this dream space within the reveries of every slumbering being. The Catalyst is the greatest, and only, practitioner of Dreamcraft, a type of summoning magic wherein the summonee is sleeping while it happens. Also through this magic, may the wildest thoughts of the imagination be reified. The Catalyst, once it has gathered enough energy from the strings betwixt its legs, may produce a spore to be bred with any mythical monster's eggs to create the Dream Mythicals, monsters envisioned in the dreams of the Mythicals. Also, during a Mythical's journey to Mythical Island via Dreamcraft, it can bear witness to the patches in the sewn seam by the sew machine from Spirit. To note, the moon in the monster world symbolizes both fantastical travel and far-fetched aspirations, and symbolically, the mythical sigils eclipsing twin moons symbolize the monsters truly belonging to more than one world, and the prevalence of singular moon imagery on this island symbolizes that the Mythicals have finally reached their true home. Now, on the topic of sleep, I wonder when those slumbering colossals will finally awaken from their slumbers. The first of the Ox Seasonals to go outwards and celebrate its event, Clavavera, headed off to Bone Island and dressed up the island in all sorts of flowers, skulls, candles, allowing the monsters there to commune with their past ancestors through celebration and observance of the beat hereafter. Dipsters also decided to follow Clavavera and go to Bone Island too. Don't worry, Dipsters don't harm Titans, they just rest snugly in their pores. How they got there, however, is another matter entirely. Clavaveras also decided to permanently change their headdress to be less offensive and more accommodating to the human world. Gobblegord too goes out to Firehaven to celebrate Feast Ember once again, but it can't quite remember how to get to Fire Oasis. Gobblegord gets some help from the newfound Firehaven Wubbox to spring launch it to Fire Oasis. Upon its arrival to Fire Oasis, it greets the mythical monster Trouble, a self-considered liaison between the living ocean and the monster world, cementing Fire Oasis' spot as a landmark upon the living ocean. Finally, after so long, it happened. The Colossals have started to stir in their slumber and awaken. Much like how Kane's map led to the discovery of the continent, and how Blabbit's scroll led to the discovery of Wublin Island, the secrets to rousing the Colossals lie within the Colossal Conundra. Scraps of paper that, when fully assembled, reveal what depicts the fully opened eye of their respective island's Colossal. When all the pieces of Conundrum have been compiled, the island's Colossi, an ancient obelisk tied to the consciousness of the Colossals, rids itself of eras of debris and begins to shudder open, and with this, the Colossals shall awaken, the burden of their ancient sacrifice shall be lifted, and the Colossals shall go from resting to becoming whole once more. The Colossals are a bit out of practice, however, so while they can add to the songs of their islands, they aren't able to return to their old duties of using the song for deity and creation. Not yet, anyways. First, the Plant Colossal was awakened, and others were soon to follow. Yet again, an auxiliary seasonal went out to celebrate its season for the very first time, this time being Crescendo Moon, in which there was a crescendo on the moon. Caralong, by the power of its chimekeeper, the staff, traveled through this crescendo rift to Magical Sanctum, where the peace and serenity of the event makes not even the Enchantler dare want to rouse the event by opening its eyes. As the moon represents one's deepest wants and desires, the Enchantler instead goes through a beautiful makeup transformation in order to honor its dream of becoming a Colossal. Also making an appearance upon Magical Sanctum, as well as Ethereal Island, are the Crystallium Castles. Castles made of Crystallium, a mineral which is sparser than any other in abundance, being made directly from the Colossal's tampering with Bubblerite, and as such, it is only found in the Pocket Dimension. The material can somehow impart instructions of how to use it upon contact with the user, resulting in its castles being built flawlessly and effortlessly, much like Pyrosite, which was fashioned much after Crystallium. The next mythical monster, yeah, made its appearance upon the Earth and Mythical Islands. This renowned cackling prankster is revealed to have been the master and teacher behind all of Hula's classics, and even spread a rumor that misnamed the Titan Hahu, whose real name is still up to debate. When the heavy clouds surrounding Fairy Island dissipate and the clear blue sky can shine through, the folk hero Fiddle makes its way to Fairy Island, along with the Dipsters, and the magic of Clover spell begins for the first time ever. The Cold Colossal awakens. Deep in the depths of the living ocean, in a region known only as the Monstriana Trench, with diverse lifeforms such as Glimmerglaws, Jleljiggles, and Anemonons, the Anglo lies. The mythical monster that resides on Water Island. Anglo spends its time doing one of two things. Either entertaining others with fantabulous light displays, or gazing up at the stars from which it hails. It thinks so oft about its home, that its dream mythical is one of its friends from over yonder, the Ping Hound. Over on Wublin Island, where the spark of life abounds, evolution is sure to be second nature. With the help of the Rare Wubbox, who is known for adventuring to the human world to make itself rare, Wubbox has re-engineered the spark of life to allow the imbuement of rare eggs, along with keys to literally unlock the Wublin's evolutionary potential, to allow common Wublins to be zapped into rare Wublins. As Rare Wubbox puts it, it seems that the path towards self-actualization is aided by entering a state of hibernation or dormancy, something that all electric elementals have the potential to achieve. The next seasonal was ready to go out and celebrate, this time being the Vivane celebrating the Echoes of Eco. Destined to celebrate its event in the higher plane by the Amber Colossal itself, the Colossal sends a great critter migration vacation, an event where critters, animals usually locked to one location, travel all across the monster world in one sightseeing mass, to swoop right past Vivane and carry it to Amber Island to celebrate the Echoes of Eco, decorated with seeds preserved from the Grapefruit Grove. Alas, a great gust of wind, alike to the sponge that made Light Island known, blew Vivane out of the sky, sending it all the way to Sugarbush Island, giving the island its newest resident in years. Don't worry though. The Vane has a custom-made vessel, so it can be summoned back to the higher planes to celebrate the Echoes of Eco with all of its fire elemental friends. In other fiery and seasonal news, thanks to a newfound glass idol, the Spirit decides to go on an adventure to discover the truth of the Squeed and the primeval Eye, which is strangely shared among many decorative beings. Its perplexed exploration, upon a boat aptly named Spirit of Adventure 2, takes it to Fire Oasis, at which point it enters the mini-mine. After a series of unfortunate events, it finally places the Squeed effigy upon his special pedestal. And all of a sudden, Gobligord appears and is flung to Fire Haven. Why? I can tell you. To save Gobligord from a fiery re-entry and an even more fiery landing, Fire Haven Rare Wubbox comes out of the vaults to save it. Spirit was now free to use Fire Oasis as its base for research, similar to how it was used as a base by the Fire Elementals to discover all the magical islands in the past. One of Spirit's other discoveries during the inaugural Purple Explorer was about the mysterious waters of the living ocean. They contain, or are made of, an M-shaped amoeba, the same M that appears on the coins. I'm dubbing it an amoeba until otherwise disproven. The Air Colossal awakens. Over on the otherworldly Ethereal Island, the Ethereals, with the help of the seasonal monster Monculus and a bit of time travel, uncover some very old statues from when the Colossals were experimenting in the Pocket Dimension. Forever suspended in a snapshot from when the lone remaining eccentric Colossal was shaping the 2B Ethereal Island, surrounded by blueprints, crystallium lattices, and many familiar statues, the modern denizens of the island can celebrate Life Formula, the thing that gave them life. Through some interdimensional rifts caused by the instability of Woodland Island's storm, similarly to how it arrived on Seasonal Shanty, Monculus also ends up on the similarly electricized island, now existing on Woodland Island. Considering rifts, during the longest days of the year after the estival, summer, solstice, thanks to charged particles in the atmosphere, the Aurora Monstralis that surrounds Light Island turns into the Prism Gate. The gate bathes Light Island with all colors of the spectrum and allows globes to transform into singing monsters, becoming the colorful Whizbang. To capture the magical feeling of the colorful phenomena, the monsters have devised to use special fireworks that light up the night sky and resonate with the feeling of belonging that sky painting is all about. The island itself is also decorated with colorful kaleidoscopic decorations and patterns. The Titan Phosphor dims its lights as to not step on the toes of the mystical phenomena, and gemstones that seem to be supersized prismants also help to decorate the island. Dipsters also make their way over to Light Island. The Water Colossal awakens. The Celestials, being children and still acting as such, got kicked out of a classic summer song staple, the Clubbox, a Wubbox-shaped club, for being cringe. The teacherly bookworm came to pick them up from their field trip, flying them through the skies on the ancient skyship, a remnant from the Dawn of Fire that was once long thought lost. It dropped them off on Celestial Island. There, with the poison-affiliated constellation of Poison's Mark shining overhead, the young Poison Celestial, Skaratar, began to ascend, becoming an adult. This prompted the Celestials to rebuild the old observatory so that they could view their constellations. However, it quickly fell apart to their dismay. After dropping the Celestials off at Celestial Island, Bookworm continued its voyage onward until it landed at Psychic Island, where it can celebrate its love of reading, puzzles, and overall being a scholar through the Mind Boggle season event. The Titan of Psychic Island decided to help in this venture by spawning shelf loads of books, upon books, upon books, upon towers of books. The Dipsters also decided to make an appearance on Psychic Island. The Earth Colossal awakens. And that's where we are today! Now it's time for the extra section. A bit of a conclusion, some in-game things that specifically said whatnot, like the Tribal Island Prophecy, Colossing and Monster Glyphics, and just things to wrap this up. The Tribal Island Prophecy. At one point in history, few could have foreseen the formation of Tribal Island. After all, the Colossals and their island hosts were fated to go their separate ways, never to rejoin. Were they not? The advent of Tribal Island represents the fulfillment of a prophecy from primitive times, in which greater bonds than ever before will be forged between caretakers of the monster realm, and harmony will once more be achieved. The Colossinga Monster Glyphics. During the waning years of the Dawn of Fire, two Colossals were troubled, worrying that peace and stability in the monster world couldn't last forever. While both believed that the best way to prepare for the future was to strengthen the musical abilities of the singing monsters, they disagreed on how best to go about it. One Colossal contended that individual training, conducted in a special environment and focused on each monster's unique craft, was the answer. It found a deserted landmass and imbued it with its life force to create the Colosseum, where monsters could empower themselves to become better performers in the conservatory. This was later revealed to have been a timely decision, as it was not long after inscription missing. Age was done, splintering the continent into many pieces and signaling the end of the Dawn of Fire. The other Colossal, inspired by the actions of their friend, chose another landmass to shift their power into, taking along a piece of the amber containing an important figure to act as the island's centerpiece. There, it created a prophecy that foretold of a time when monsters singing together and being united in song would help restore balance in the monster world. Excerpt from Mysteries of the Living Ocean, including the mention of Glubbers. Since the immemorial, the living ocean has been the cradle upon which the monster world rests. But what do we truly know about it? From far-flung rumors of deep-sea leviathans known as Glubbers, to scattered reports of a horned creature dashing to and fro upon ocean currents, this tome will strive to dive into as much detail as can be mustered. Where to begin? Let's examine some fossil evidence that dates back to the monster prehistory, all the way back during the Dawn of Fire. Evidence of a large aquatic creature that could support rocky structures on its back have been found strewn across the living ocean floor. Curiously, these remains are accompanied by debris that resembles party balloons and confetti. Researchers are puzzled by the discovery of these items side by each. Clearly, more expeditions need to be undertaken to discover more. In-game description of rares and epics. Introducing super valuable and ultra coveted rare monsters! These special versions of your favorite characters are only available to buy or breed every once in a while. Log in often to make sure you don't miss out. Epics are the ultimate forms of your favorite monsters. Rarer than rares, they have unique breeding combinations per island, generate even more currency, and cannot breed. All of these traits come together to create the most impressive and coveted creatures in the monster world. Things I wish to include but do not know where to do so. The Jammer Lands, which are located next to Fire Oasis, and they are from Jammer Splash, a spin-off game. I would like to thank the MSM Wiki version history page, the various many episodes of My Singing Monsters Live, and their hangouts, and all those managed shenanigans that they've done, the Fire Oasis pre-show specifically, and episode 111, and all the trailers. They have really helped me source a lot of stuff that I use for this. Not to mention monster bios, in-game descriptions, and stuff that literally tells you what happens.
Video.